What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Scouting the Fins. Today's show is brought to you by ThompsonCigar.com. Go to ThompsonCigar.com and use the code 3yards20. That's 3YARDS20 for 20% off your order of $75 or more at Thompson Cigar. All right. Today we have a special show for you. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Coach Smith. Coach, how are we doing today?
Hey, doing good. Have been looking forward to this one for a while. Going to talk to somebody who, when I first watched the Senior Bowl this year, I hadn't heard of this guy. But then I watched the first set of offensive line one-on-ones, and this dude really stood out to me on day 1 and 2, and then carried over to the game as well. Ended up looking up some of his tape. Really impressed with him as a player, and reached out, asked him if he'd be interested in coming on, and he was all about it.
Of course, and we're going to go ahead and introduce our special guest today, Sacramento State offensive lineman Jackson Slater. Jackson, how are we doing today, bud?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. And, Coach, we both watched a little bit of Jackson Slater throughout the Senior Bowl. Some clips on Twitter here and there as well. Jackson, welcome to the show. This is a Miami Dolphins podcast as well. And before we get into this, what do you know about the Miami Dolphins and this Mike McDaniel system?
Yeah, not a ton. Whenever anyone's asked me any question about NFL schemes, I'm not really too well versed in what each team does. I'm kind of coming into everything with like an open mind, I would say. And, I feel like I've done well in, zone and gap stuff, well-versed in protections too. So I think I can fit in anywhere, but, not super familiar with what each team does for sure.
And, that's okay. When Coach and I started off this podcast with Eric, we really took a deep dive, 2 years of information analysis and watching the film with this Dolphins, specifically their run game and passing game concept. So we're still learning some things as we go. And I'm sure whoever you get drafted to, whether it's the Dolphins or not, you're going to have to do a lot of this deep dive that we did in 2 years in off season. So it's going to be a challenge, and it's going to be interesting and fun. Coach?
Yeah, so, just going to throw a few questions at you here, Jackson. We'd like to learn more about you as well as, talk some football stuff here. So, the first thing that I wanted to, talk to you about was, I know in some of the other stuff that I saw from you, you said that during your high school career, you only had, seasons with winning one game. And I know that as a high school coach, that can really wear on you. And I heard you say that Sac State was the only school to offer you a full ride, and that was a large part of your decision to go there. So my question is, was playing in the NFL something you always felt was in your future, or was there a point in your journey where it flipped from a dream to realizing that it was a real possibility?
Yeah, had always been a dream since I was a little kid. Started in flag football, and I thought I was on the path to be a tight end, and the next, Rob Gronkowski was kind of how I envisioned myself. But, getting into real football, in like 5th grade and doing that till 8th grade before high school, definitely figured out I was an offensive lineman. And then I think, more so fell in love with the position later in high school, and really started getting technical with it, learning the fundamentals. What do successful offensive linemen do? And I think that propelled me into college, and was always a dream. Always thought it was an attainable goal to get to the NFL. You see guys from the FCS level, especially offensive linemen, do it every year. And I felt like I had the ability to be one of those guys, and kind of started to more feel like a reality. I'd say this past off season with, agents hitting me up, seeing more scouts on campus, just talking to our coaches, them telling me that they're there for me, stuff like that, kind of made me feel like I had a real shot. So.
Yeah, for sure. You talk about, obviously Sacramento State coming from an FCS school. There have been a couple of FCS linemen that have been part of this show. We've had Cole Strange on here, first-round pick with the New England Patriots. The Miami Dolphins were in talks to take him as well, but the Patriots swooped in the first round and took him. The other guy we also had on here was Quinn Miners, got a gigantic contract with the Broncos as well. It was one of the very first offensive lineman prospects I interviewed. But who do you style your game, and who do you model after?
Yeah, I mean, those two guys are guys I look up to for sure. I think kind of were on a similar path as me, went to the Senior Bowl, played some center, kind of found their home at guard in the NFL. I'm not too sure where I'm going to be at this point, but, kind of those type of guys are who I look up to for sure. I've always kind of aligned with the small school guys and, the guys that have, I guess came out the mud and, made it to the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl. So, Braxton Jones, Mason McCormick, those type of names are guys that come to mind that, I've looked up to over my college career and, I've kind of, set a path on, how to be successful throughout this process. And then, once you get to the NFL as well.
Yeah. So I know you played guard at Sac State, and you said that you were the backup center there as well. So that helps to explain how it seemed like it was a bit of a natural transition for you to at the Senior Bowl to play center there as well. And I know that in addition, you said that you know the assignments for all 5 offensive linemen, as well as some of the tight end accountabilities in your schemes as well. And I was very much the same way in high school, but obviously not as talented as what you are. But I had no idea in high school that I wanted to coach football. Do you see yourself wanting to coach football when your playing career is finished?
Yeah, I mean, probably something along those lines. Whenever I finish up, I think, I'm going to have to stay around the game in some respect, whether it's, training high school kids or, even, maybe moving back home and coaching my high school team, seeing if we can't get some success. I think I got to stay around the game somehow. So, I think there might be some form of coaching in my future. I don't know if I want, the coaching schedule that, my Sac State coaches have. But, I think staying around the game is something I got to do for sure.
For sure. Let's get into a little bit of film review, specifically when you were at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. A lot of great clips. This was a backside zone run right here up at the Senior Bowl. Brandon had it right there. You and Emory Jones did a fantastic job on this backside zone run. Talk to us a little bit about what you envisioned before the play, what you're looking at, specifically the front you're seeing over here, and what are some of the landmarks and key points you're looking to hit. I'll go ahead and slow it down. So why don't you go ahead and explain to us how this play is working?
Yeah, so I think, this is a play where kind of understanding what everyone's doing is really helpful. So it's just a pretty basic wide zone. So, you got the tackle man blocking on the front side, and you got a single between the front side guard and center. And then me and Emory are working a B backside. So, pre-snap, I'm thinking I gotta stab this guy. I got to try and do something with this 3-tech and try and, help Emory to get on. And, he does a great job cutting off here. But, a coaching point our coaches gave us at the Senior Bowl was, don't fuck yourself to help your buddy. So, I'm giving him as much as I can, but I also know I kind of got to fly with, that Sam Backer kind of pushed a little bit. And, that front side singles working to the guy slightly outside the box. So I know I kind of got to get on my horse, which is, why I go a little flatter there. And, the landmark when we're climbing to the next level on wide zone is, they told us front side armpit. So that's kind of what I was going for there. And, when you hit your landmarks, it usually, works out well. So, the back makes a great cut right there in between us. And it's a nice explosive run there. So that was a great play.
Follow-up question. You were coached on the national team, correct?
American team.
American. And who was your who was your OL coach for the American
team? It
was
James Ferentz and Jari Evans were our coaches.
Okay. Coach, what's your analysis on this play?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Jackson did a great job of explaining that. We talked about the single block on the front side, so that's your front side A gap between your center and your guard, and then because it's numbers on the front side of the zone and then it's letters on the back side. So even though it doesn't really look like a combo on the backside with Jackson and Emory Jones, that B gap block is a B block in a, it technically is a combo block, but like Jackson said, don't fuck yourself to help your teammate. All right, so Jackson, and that was a great play. And in all the interviews that I've watched of you, you're really a humble guy, and you're very clear in your responses and the stuff that you need to improve your game on. I want you to take a minute and brag about yourself a little bit and tell us what you do well. Like, what is your calling card that's gonna, let you succeed in the NFL?
Yeah, I think, first thing that comes to mind is being an athlete. I think I've been, super athletic throughout my college career. And, I think it shows on tape too, especially with how often I get out in space on, power, pin and pull, the screen game. I think there was a lot of stuff in our offense that kind of I was able to highlight my athleticism. And I think that's a huge asset for me. My versatility, at one point or another throughout college, I played all 5 positions on the offensive line, whether it was in spring ball or fall camp or in season. So just being well-versed on offensive line play and, understanding how a unit needs to work together to have success. Also being a part of a lot of successful offensive lines, knowing what it takes to be a good group. Consistency is another word that I would use to describe my game. Just a guy that gets the job done, however he can. And I think at the end of the day, that's what you want in an offensive lineman is a guy who, understands his assignment, understands his role in the offense, and, gets the job done every time. And, I think that's something, I took a lot of pride in throughout college, and, we'll continue to take pride in the NFL.
Coach, if we take this back into the Dolphins lens from what Jackson is saying, just doing your job, making sure the right thing is done. 2023 for the Dolphins offensive line and even the tight ends and skill position players, blocking was not as adequate. With Jackson's intelligence working all 5 positions of the offensive line, this has to be value added if the Dolphins were to draft Jackson Slater.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at, especially in the wide zone scheme that the Dolphins run, like we've seen in the film reviews that we've done, how some of the motions have really hurt the Dolphins in terms of, those combination blocks, getting confused as to who they're going to at the second level, right? So when you get a guy like Jackson in there that, not only understands what he's supposed to do, but understands what the guys around him are doing, that, that would be a huge benefit in being able to clean up some of that stuff that we, saw the Dolphins struggle with last year.
So, Jackson, this Dolphins offense is very timing oriented, especially at the snap. There's a lot of motions going around. There's Haas, there's Halls, there's Z's, there's jets happening, and there's half motions as well with the tight ends, fullbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. Sometimes multiple motions at the same time. Do these motions tend to affect the timing of your guys' cadence and what you guys look for at the pre-snap?
Yeah, I mean, timing, I think, I say wouldn't play a huge role, but definitely, pre-snap reads, I'd say it would play a role. That's something I'm still working on, trying to understand at a high level is, how the picture might change based on, what motions are, a part of the play. And that's something that, at least at Sac State, our offensive line didn't like a lot when we had a, pre-snap motion, didn't necessarily know it was coming, and, picture changes right before we're snapping the ball. And, I think that can lead to a lot of confusion at times. So I think just having a high level understanding of, whatever offense you're in, and trying to, learn, the more experience you have in an offense, what everyone's doing on each play, I think, the more successful you're going to be. And, understanding little niche stuff, just like emotion pre-snap, I think will give you a lot of clarity on what's going on.
So one of the things we talk about a lot with the Dolphins offensive line that they haven't had is continuity across the offensive line. And, one of the questions I have for you, Jackson, is so when those pre-snap motions happen, right, and the picture starts to change, You know, do you guys then try to kind of last second communicate the changes, or are those motions so late that it's kind of like, oh crap, we just got to go, and you know the five guys up front just have to have that chemistry to know how that picture's changing, and for them all to see that picture the same way?
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, you want to, call out everything you're doing and, be sure everyone's on the same page. But, more often than not, you're not always going to have enough time to do that, especially, with motions on different plays. So, yeah, like you said it perfectly, I think, having good chemistry with an offensive line and, everyone being locked in on, their assignment, even if the picture does change, understanding what they need to do. And, regardless of, the pre-snap read, I think, the chemistry is a big piece of it. That's something I was fortunate enough to have at Sac State was, a lot of solid groups where everyone knew what they were doing. So yeah, at times we would get a little, messed up with, the pre-snap read and, something might change right before the snap. But, I think more often than not, we were able to sort it out and, be successful. So.
Yeah. Another big thing with this Dolphins offensive line that they kind of struggled with last season was picking up stunts and twists, especially after the fact of the motions. Want to highlight a play right here from the Senior Bowl. Right here, I'll go ahead and slow it down for you. I think you did a great job picking up this stunt and this twist. What's something you read right after the snapper? Is there sometimes a tell when you can see defensive linemen trying to clog the hole and keep a hole open where the looper or the stunter can come through?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that, you can try to look for. I think, a big thing is down and distance, third down, third and long. You're probably going to see more games than, on first down. So that's something to think about. Just alignment, if it's supposed to be a 3 tech, and might be a little wider. He's maybe a little wide here, maybe closer to a 4-eye. So that's maybe a little bit of a tell too. But, for me, I think, the biggest thing is being able to have, the reflexes to see what's coming and, have the vision to understand what's going on. So, the coaching points we got at Sac State was take care of the penetrator first, make sure you get a strong punch and are able to pass him off clean because that's usually the guy that's going to cause the most havoc when a game happens, and you usually have a little bit more time on the looper. So, I was, did my best to give a strong punch here, and I think it was sufficient on passing him off, and then getting off to the looper. I think my athleticism, usually makes that pretty easy for me. So that's kind of what I'm thinking on this play.
So going back to the communication aspect of it, is that something that you guys verbally communicate before the play starts there? Like if you catch one of those tells that a guy's lined up wide, like do you pass that information off to your tackle, or is it, just one of those things where, you just kind of see it and then, that just changes your technique a little bit as you're coming off the ball, or do you communicate it and kind of set up for it?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really have a specific call. Maybe we'd give like some sort of alert that, something might be going on. Maybe they're talking to each other mid-play, or again, the alignment's weird. Something's going on that, is out of the ordinary. But, I'd say more often than not in the heat of the game, we're usually not saying much, to alert a twist. And I think, again, it just, the chemistry piece is huge, I think, especially on the offensive line. And just kind of understanding how different guys play and, that what the right technique is on, different stuff you see. So.
All right. Speaking of some different stuff in terms of motion and the Mike McDaniel offense, this play right here, Eric and I have seen countless amount of times in the preseason and even the regular season. We see a lot of this type of play called in different formations out of 11, out of 12, and out of 21 personnel. The thing with the Dolphins is that they run the same type of plays out of different formations, making it hard for the defenses to tell, but it makes it easy on the offense and the offensive line on where they need to go on their landmarks and what they need to do. So this is basically what we call dope. It's kind of like a GF counter reverse. We're
Okay.
gonna see it. We're gonna see it in this play, right here. Obviously, they're lined up. Looks a little bit of a heavy box. You have somewhat of a 5-0 front. Coach, when you are, telling your high school kids or even college kids, what are you telling your offensive linemen to read? And then Jackson, can you chime in? What do you see pre-snap, and what is going on in your mind about this play before the ball snapped?
Well, I mean, a lot of times when you run a play like this, it's set up with something else. You've run that counter a few times. You have a solid idea of the way that the defense is going to be lined up. And, you really want it to look like the counter when they're coming off the ball. So instead of a player blocking down, right, now they're given that down block look, but the defender has seen the counter, so they're going to try to fight over top, and you just kind of let them go over top to let that happen, as you see the line climbing and creating that wall to the play side of the reverse. So I guess the big thing here is just that you want the counter reverse to look similar as they're coming off the ball as to what the counter does that they've seen already.
Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think with trick plays, obviously, the coaching points are going to change up. Even watching this, they don't even block the 0 or the 1 right here, just because they know that the reverse is going to get out. So, I think there's always going to be little wrinkles on, trick plays for sure. But again, like doing your best to kind of make it feel like, what a typical, GH counter would look like. They got the deuce going front side, just, stuff like just trying to do stuff, I think, to cause misdirection. But, looks like it was a good explosive play. I think, everyone's obviously, doing their job, and, that's obviously the most important piece. So, yeah.
Yep, we got one more dope play. This one out in shotgun personnel. It looks like 12 personnel right here with 2 tight ends. We got John New and Durham Smythe. There's the motion once again. However, the blocking, Jackson, do you see the blocking as the same, or do you see it a little bit differently on your end?
Can you run through it again?
Yeah, I'll give it through one more time.
Okay.
All right, this is up against the Arizona Cardinals. We have John Smith in the backfield, Durham Smythe as the motion man, and Jalen Wright gets the ball in the reverse. This is in a regular season game. Oh, there it is. Another explosive.
Yeah, so, I mean, when I'm looking at it, it definitely, it kind of feels more like a screen almost to me, just trying to get guys out in space, where the ball's going. Still some misdirection with that puller there, but, watch the center kind of deke, the D lineman there and get out in space on the outside. So, I'm a fan of it. I like getting out in space personally. And, they're still trying to muddy it up enough to where, the D linemen aren't able, even though he makes the play there, just kind of doing your best to keep those guys from being able to hawk the ball down. But, definitely looks a little different than the first one where it was more of a, true GH counter look. Well, this one, kind of feels more like, you're trying to get more guys out in front of the ball, which, more often than not leads to successful plays. So.
Yeah. So, Jackson, today the NFL Combine invite list came out, and obviously your name was on there. When we're looking for you at the Combine in Indianapolis, what events do you see as being your best ones that are really going to, showcase yourself for the talent evaluators that are there?
Yeah, I think, right now I feel really confident about all of them. I think at worst I'll put up, probably slightly above average times on everything. I should have a solid showing in bench. I think I'm going to jump well. The goal would be a sub 540. I think that's attainable for me. I think I'm going to do well in the shuttle and the 3-cone drill as well. So, I think I'm going to have a solid day. So I think, watch the whole thing and, I'll put on a show for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Specifically within the Shanahan, McVay, and McDaniel scheme, the big indicator of success in these schemes is the 3-cone drill, your time in the 3-cone drill, and your shuttle run. Now, obviously, we've watched some clips. You are really good at getting out in space, going vertical, and especially to the second level. Now, specifically, I wanted to touch a little bit on pass plays. Let me go ahead and share this play right here. This is a 3rd and 10, 3rd and long at Miami's 18-yard line. It's an intermediate pass. The entire offense is based off of timing and accuracy and intermediate to deep throws. I'm going to go ahead and run the play. Pre-snap, Jackson, what are you seeing and what indications can you see along the defense of where you might be sliding to and who's going to be a potential blitzer on this play?
Yeah, so looking at it, I'd think they're sliding left just based on numbers. You got 6 to the left, 5 to the right, as well as that safety is, a little more over the top, I'd say, than on the right. So you could be looking at like a corner cat look potentially. That inside corner looks like he could be coming maybe. And as an offensive lineman, you always want to hedge your bets. But again, even on the right side, that linebacker looks a little tight for me as well. But I think on a numbers standpoint, you're probably sliding left and hopefully picking up anything that comes. So
yeah. So it doesn't necessarily look like a slide, but the key point I want to take a look at is right here, right guard Liam Eichenberg. Now, you played right guard a couple times at Sac State. This play right here, he's lined up against Jared Versey, who played one hell of a season, Defensive Player of the Year. We see Liam Eichenberg get knocked back pretty quickly. I want to get your thoughts on when you're facing a guy like Jared Versey, a Defensive Player of the Year, what are some landmark key points that you're going to try to make sure he doesn't overpower you?
Yeah, so looking at it here, kind of tilted in. So I don't think, even though he's kind of a tight 3 tech, I'm probably not kicking out to him. I kind of understand what he's doing there with a little bit of a jump set. But, I think just misses with his hands. So, obviously something I'm thinking about pre-snap is, getting my hands inside as best I can, trying to throw a strong punch. And, everyone gets got sometimes. I got plenty of clips like this too. But, I think that's something that I'm focusing more on, making the jump to the NFL level from the FCS level is, just a little stuff like hand placement that, will give you a huge advantage that, at the FCS level, you could probably get away with it sometimes, if you're just a more athletic guy or, a stronger guy and maybe you don't have the best hand placement, but you can still find success. So, I think this is a good example of, how hand placement can kind of get you caught sometimes. But I do understand the set for sure. So.
Yeah, and that's a great point on the hand placement because, you hear it more when we're talking about the defensive guys and the pass rushers and, people that are scouting, it'll say they need to learn to use their hands better and stuff like that. But can you just talk about on the offensive side how important it is, to have the fine-tuned, hands for an offensive lineman as well?
Yeah, it's a super, feels like a super small part of the game, but it makes a huge difference. Just, it's where all your power is really. You can't block someone, on the tops of their shoulder pads and have success. So you really have to fine tune that stuff. And, every little piece, comes together to, make a whole offensive lineman. So, even just having your hand like this versus like this makes a big difference too. So just like little tiny stuff that helps you generate way more power than, if you're not focusing on it, is a huge part of offensive line play. So.
All right, one more clip I wanted to share. It's another pass play right here. Jackson, what are you looking at pre-snap? Where are you going to be sliding at? Who could be a potential blitzer or a looper on this third and long?
Yeah, so looks like just, 4 down front. Looks like one high. So I'm, just based on numbers, probably sliding left. But it does look like, if you could play it for like another second, maybe.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, we're definitely sliding left here. That linebacker definitely walked up on the front there. It's a 6-man pro, so should be covered on the backside, even if that guy comes as well. So we should have everyone picked up here. And for me, whenever we get this at Sac State and have the 6-man pro, and a guy walked up, a big part of having a successful play is understanding who the point is. So they're probably pointing that front side Mike that walked out there early in the play, and just knowing who you got. So, for me, how I would do it is I'd just count in my head, center's getting that, 3 tech right there. I'm getting, probably that like wide 9, and then
Von Miller.
Yeah, and then the tackle's taking the guy blitzing off the edge. But, center didn't slide all the way, I guess, on this one. Or maybe they're sliding right. Yeah, they're sliding right. So, but, I think sliding either way works. Same numbers on both sides. Yeah.
So I've heard you a couple of times now when Hassam's asked you about those. You're calling out where the safeties are. So, and I never really thought about it that way, but I guess, it makes sense from a numbers perspective. But, as an offensive lineman, when you're, especially in pass pro, when you're coming up to the line, like as an offensive lineman, are you looking at where the safeties are as well? Or are you more so looking at the, front 7 or the box area?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say definitely depends on the play call. So we'd have a lot of stuff where we'd have to account for a corner or, a blitzer on a potential play. So usually those 6-man pros, those empty pros, where we're going to have to account for an extra guy if he comes. Even on, pin and pull and power, sometimes we'd have to account for, a corner cat if it came to. And those safeties don't tell any lies. So, if you see a safety over the top in a corner and press, hedge your bets and say, the corner's coming. Doesn't happen all the time, but, you want to be prepared for stuff. I think that's a big part of being an offensive lineman is just being prepared for, anything that gets thrown your way and being able to solve problems and react the right way. So taking in all the information you can, where the safeties are the linebackers pushed? Are they backfitting? Just little stuff like that was something that really helped me throughout my career. And I think, I'm only going to get more, technical and focused and, learn the little tiniest stuff that makes a big difference when the play starts. So.
Yep. Jackson, we talked a lot about football. Outside of football, what do you do to de-stress and relax? Like, what are some of your favorite things you like to do?
Yeah, so I'm kind of like a nerdy guy. This is always funny for me when it comes up. I collect sports cards. I build Legos. Specifically Star Wars Legos.
Yeah.
I'm a Marvel and DC and Star Wars fan, and all that nerdy stuff I think is really cool, and all the lore behind stuff and whatever. My girlfriend's visiting me this weekend. We're gonna go watch the new Captain America, and stuff like that is kind of how I get away and focus on something else for a little bit. When there's so much football going on. But it's a really easy pastime. Sometimes stuff gets a little expensive, but it's really fun. So yeah.
Yep. Follow up to that. I'll be watching the new Captain America movie later on this week. But who would be the best 5 Marvel characters to build out for your offensive line?
Yeah, I'd probably go Hulk and Abomination at tackles. I'd probably go Fat Thor at center. And
Fat Thor. Love it.
At the guards, I'd probably put, I'm trying to think of maybe Red Hulk and The Hulk ones and Thanos probably at the guards.
There you go.
I mean, just, the big guys, I feel like Hulks are usually a cheat code when it would come to offensive line play. But, I think that's a pretty solid front five, so.
Yeah, it sounds about like McDaniel described. He wants his offensive linemen. He said if he could have them all 6'7", 330, that's what he'd go with. So yeah, absolutely, Hulk's a cheat code when it comes to forming an offensive line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jackson, have you had any other conversations with the Miami Dolphins outside of the Senior Bowl?
No, I mean, haven't had a ton of conversations with anyone outside the Senior Bowl, to be honest. I think I remember I'm coming to a couple practices and the spring and fall. But I'm sure there's going to be a ton of conversations at the combine and after that. So we'll kind of see how it shakes out. So
Yep. Dolphins assistant offensive line coach, Coach Lem, was the national team OL coach. Were you able to talk to him, or was he able to talk to you at any point at the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, at one point we did a team swap, and I wouldn't say it was a ton of conversation. Each coach on the national team just had us fill out a survey on a piece of paper. So not a ton of intimate conversation going on, but they had a good group over there, and I'm sure he did a good job. So.
Oh, all right, Jackson. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll be rooting for you at the combine and specifically at the draft. Best of luck to you, and maybe you'll become a Miami Dolphin one day.
Yeah, we'll see. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. This basketball season, when your favorite stars score buckets, we're alley-ooping you an opportunity to win money from watching sports with Underdog. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play now in your state. To play, choose whether a player will go higher or lower on one of their stats, such as points, assists, rebounds, and more. They've got all your favorite leagues, teams, and stars to choose from. Create entries with all basketball picks, or mix and match across other sports. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn $1 into 1,000 just with your hoops knowledge. Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code 3yards to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with the promo code 3yards. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit. Higher or lower, you make the call on Underdog.
Be 18 plus, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 19 plus in Alabama, New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE NY or text Hope NY to 467-369. Must be.
Well, now we go ahead and bring in our other co-host, Eric Wiedecke. Eric, listening into Jackson answer our interview questions, break down his film, and even the Dolphins film, he said he doesn't really know much about NFL schemes, but he was able to break down a lot of these things very easily.
Yeah, I mean, as Coach kind of alluded to, you could clearly hear that this is a humble guy coming into the process, and a guy that has a really good sense of self-awareness in terms of, the things that he himself is good at and some of the things, he needs to work on at the position. So I think he comes in with a really good knowledge base. But the most important thing, and the thing that I really liked the most about him, was how much thought he seemed to have put in beforehand to the question about which 5 Marvel characters you were going to put along the offensive line. That is not the first time he's thought about that question. I can promise you that.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you that, as an offensive lineman growing up, like, all those action figures and stuff that you have, like that turns into an offensive line. You can guarantee that he had, some Marvel superheroes, and he was sitting there in his room making up an offensive line and, putting Captain America back there at fullback.
Yeah, we got to talk how big and impressive he is. 6'4", 316. And he put together his most impressive season in 2024. He did not allow a single sack or a quarterback hit through 9 starts before, a knee injury cut his 2024 campaign short. 44 career starts, 3 first-team All-Big Sky selections, first-team AP All-American honors, and he cemented his legacy at Sac State as the first offensive lineman to achieve that 3-time conference recognition. Super versatile, has played all 5 positions at Sac State and along the offensive line. I will say one thing though, Coach, and is his arm length a concern specifically if he were to play as a guard?
So, I mean, is there a measurement that's been put out there yet for his arm length?
I think he might have probably at the Senior Bowl. I'd have to take a look at it. I think it came in just average to below average. But I have noticed that especially in these wide zone schemes, arm's length does tend to matter a little bit with the punch and trying to get into the second level. Now, I have read some reports and specifically about this scheme that they prefer above average length and athleticism, but he obviously has the athleticism, but not necessarily the arm length. I think he comes in at 32,
33
3/4.
Yeah, so I mean that's a solid arm length. It's not the 34, 35 you see out at offensive tackle, but
33. He's 33.
Yeah. So when we do talk about the wide zone scheme, the reason that becomes important is because we're talking about those combination blocks. There's times that we're asking a guard to be able to, reach across and seal a 3 technique defensive tackle. And arm length helps there because you'd like to think that you're more athletic and that your feet can get you there, but that's not always reality. And Jackson has some great answers in terms of the fine tuning of the hands, right? And that's where that stuff carries over. And when you talk about, I mean, Jackson had a great thing like right your hand there or there makes a difference, and it seems really small, but by the same token, the difference between a 32-inch arm and a 34-inch arm makes the same kind of small difference when you're looking at going from a small school college environment up to the NFL.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at 33-inch arm length, specifically if he's going to end up playing inside at guard, I'm not super concerned about it. I think that the most important thing, especially in this system, is going to be, as alluded to there, his legs being able to get him there. And if he is a player that, as he, is hoping can run, below 5 and show that athleticism at 6'4", 316, I think that would 33-inch arms are more than fine. Especially when you consider, I mean, football, obviously, game of inches here, ultimately being able to get that hand on the defender at the second level on a run play, even if it's just to knock him off his path by just a little bit, makes a massive difference, especially when you've got backs like Devon Achane and Jalen Wright who have that speed to take advantage of that extra split second that a guy like Slater can provide. So I'm not super concerned with the length there with a guy like Slater.
Yeah, I think just his versatility screams Miami Dolphins and Chris Greer. We see that a lot with Liam Eichenberg, Isaiah Wynn, a little bit in Patrick Paul as well. I remember when I interviewed Patrick Paul right after he got drafted, he mentioned about working with Duke Manyweather to get his punches corrected out. And we saw that improvement when, for his last season at Houston to his first season playing with the Miami Dolphins. But I think with Slater, he's going to be working throughout the offseason and even in the combine. He's working right now. But I think some team, maybe the Miami Dolphins, who run a lot of zone, can polish him up. Now, the question is, are they going to take offensive linemen that they can develop a year or two from now, or do they select someone who can start right away, considering where this Dolphins build is in its current form?
I really like Jackson Slater. Like I said, I hadn't even looked at him. I hadn't heard of him until turning on that Senior Bowl tape and just seeing this dude, just stuff guys in the one-on-one drills, and that's where I started looking at, and it carried over as well. But that is a big jump going from Sacramento State to the NFL. So I think that a team is going to be hard pressed to draft him and just say, yeah, you are our starting left guard from day one. But I think that one thing that Jackson really has in his favor is that versatility that he's talked about. The fact that he's played all 5 positions, the fact that he was the backup center at Sac State. So he was taking those reps. And you saw that in the Senior Bowl. So I think that when you're talking about a guy that a team could look to draft and develop to possibly be, competing for a starting spot in 2026 or 2027, that versatility is huge because, you get him in the building and then you find out where he fits best. And there's a much shorter learning curve. We saw with Willie Lampkin at the Senior Bowl, he's another guy that is probably going to transition to center in large part for him because of his lack of height and length. But if you watched him at center when they were rushing off of his snap hand, like there was times that he wasn't even out of his stance and the defender was getting pressure on the quarterback. And that's where you didn't see that with Jackson Slater because he has that experience. So, you get him in the door and that learning curve is shorter just based on his intelligence and his versatility that he's shown already.
Yeah, I think the other thing that it's, that can't be missed in this whole process here, granted, to be an NFL prospect, you have to have a certain level of athleticism, but this is a guy that comes in from a small school. Sometimes you see the smaller school guys come in maybe a little bit smaller physically. This is a dude that's got an NFL body right away. And so really it's going to come down to the amount of work he's willing to put in terms of the technique and the hand placement and how much he's really willing to dive into the playbook. That'll kind of determine whether or not this could be a guy that pushes for playing time, out the gate. I don't think any team drafts him with the idea that, yes, you're the unquestioned starter at guard. But I think that, if you go into a season with him as one of your guys competing at, pick an offensive line spot, whether it's personally, I would probably see him along the interior. But at any of those spots, I think he's capable of at least competing for that starting spot because of the fact that he has that plus athleticism and he has that NFL body right out the box. And he does seem to have a very good hold as far as, his knowledge of the NFL game, whether he'll let you guys know that or not.
I think one thing that he said really raised my eyebrows was the fact of the motions that he pointed out. Like having all these motions can get confusing, especially pre-snap, because now you have to change your entire alignment, where you're going to be going, how you're going to be blocking these defenders. And I think if you let him sit and develop for at least a year, if he can master the system, take a look at all the pre-snap motions and decipher the defenses, I think he's going to be a really, really smart player. He can help the center out if it's Aaron Brewer, if he gets drafted to the Miami Dolphins. I think you're looking at an interior offensive lineman that is going to be a solid above average starter for the foreseeable future, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And your point to the motions, like, and that's one of those things that when you go from being a student athlete in college, right, and you have all of your schoolwork on your plate, all of your personal life, and then you got to play football too. You don't have as much time to learn all of that stuff, but when you get to the NFL and that is your job, right, and you are watching all this film and you can really begin to get a grasp of how those motions affect things. Like, as a college player, you may not always understand the motions that are going on in the backfield, whereas when you get into a NFL playbook and into a NFL offensive line room, like, those are the things you're talking about, is that when you hear this motion, this is likely what's going to happen, right? They see it on the film that they're doing, because they'll, the NFL is a copycat league. So they're going to use motions they've seen from previous weeks with the expectation that the linebackers are going to move a certain way. And when that's your job, then it's a little easier to consume all of that. And I think that, based on the interview that we just had, like, Jackson is really a guy that I think is going to dive into that and really absorb that. And I think that we're going to, he's going to be a guy that's quickly going to catch on to that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think the other thing that you have to really account for, and it seems like something that I think, Jackson Slater would be really good at, is that ability to kind of adjust on the fly. He kind of talked about that when it comes to those motions. And I know that's kind of a speed of the game thing that young players, particularly at the offensive line spot, kind of deal with when it comes to those motions. I look at him as a player that the benefit that you have with Jackson Slater is, even if he is out of position for even a slight second there, he does have the athleticism to kind of course correct quickly enough to where he can adjust and get back into the play, get back to his proper assignment, and keep the offense on schedule on a given play. So even though maybe there might be some adjustment as far as the mental side of it with the motion goes, I think that, his athleticism can kind of be that, that extra margin of error for him at the next level. But obviously there is going to have to be that adjustment to the motions.
Well, here's to hoping Dolphins management, and specifically Chris Grier, do take a look at this kid. And if they have one of their mid-round picks, whether it be a fourth or fifth rounder, if he's there, maybe they could take a shot, shore up that offensive lineman for the future. But we shall see how the scouting combine goes up in March and how free agency happens for the Dolphins, and see how the roster lines up. Stick with us here, folks, on Scouting the Fins, part of the 3 Yards Per Carry podcast feed on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your co-host, Hussam Patel, Coach, and Eric. And as always, shout out to Jackson Slater. Thank you so much for this interview. Go Fins, baby.